بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. And to proceed, in the previous lesson that we had on the topic of Al-Qadar, so Al-Qadar is the last of the 6 pillars of Al-Iman. And so in the last lesson we looked at detail at the understanding of Ahlul Sunnah with respect to Al-Qadar. And we said that Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, that when they speak about Al-Qadar, they believe in it and speak about it based upon 4 levels. That there are 4 levels to belief in Al-Qada wal-Qadar. So those 4 levels, we looked at them in detail. We looked at the proofs and evidences from the Quran for each of these 4 levels. And we said that these 4 levels were, the first level was what? Al-Ilm, that's right. The first level in our belief with respect to Al-Qadr is Allah's all-encompassing knowledge, Allah's perfect knowledge of everything that is to occur in His creation. So Allah has all-encompassing knowledge. We established the proofs for this in the Quran. The second level of Al-Qadr is Al-Kitaba, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wrote in Al-Lawh al-Mahfuz, the preserved tablet, everything that is to occur. And we said that these 2 levels of Al-Qadr, of the 4 levels of Al-Qadr, that they precede the Maqdur. They come before the thing which has been Maqdur. Which means that before Allah created anything, before anything took place in this creation, that Allah's knowledge and the writing down of that knowledge with respect to what will happen in His creation, that these 2 levels are already established. So they precede the maqdur, the maqdurat, the things which are to take place. Then we said that the third level of Al-Qadar is what? Mashi'a or Al-Irada. Speech about Allah's will and Allah's wish. That nothing escapes Allah's wish. That everything which occurs as a result of Allah's will, Allah's Mashi'a or Allah's Irada. However, we said that Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, that we make an important distinction. We make a distinction between the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through which all things occur and come to be. So everything which occurs, both righteous deeds and evil deeds, these are by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is, can anyone tell me? Kawniyya. Al-Irada al-Kawniyya. Al-Mashi'a al-Kawniyya. That there is a will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through which every single thing comes into existence. And then there is another will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is called what? Al-Shar'iyya. Irada al-Shar'iyya. Which is what Allah desires and wants from His servants that they do. He wishes from His servants that they do such and such. And we said that there were a number of important distinctions we made, because without making these distinctions we will make errors in the field of Al-Qada wal-Qadar. And so from these important distinctions is that everything which Allah brings about by way of His irada kawniyya, does it automatically mean that Allah loves it and is pleased with it? And the answer is no. The answer is no. So we make a distinction that Allah's love, we make a distinction between Allah's irada and Allah's mahabba, Allah's love. By Allah willing something and bringing it into existence, it does not mean that Allah's love of that thing is established. So we make an important distinction between those two affairs. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He willed for Iblis to disbelieve. Was Allah pleased with that? The answer is no. Allah calls upon His creatures, His servants, to worship Him alone. Yet we see from the people of those who worship Isa alayhi salam, or those who worship the cross, or those who worship the stars and moons, and Allah willed for that to be, for that to come. Is Allah pleased with that? And the answer is no. So we said that we had to make this important distinction between Allah's love and Allah's irada. And we said that Allah's irada, the kawniyya is the larger circle, and Allah's irada shar'iyya is the smaller circle inside the larger circle. Because from everything which takes place, from it is that which Allah is pleased with, and from it is that which Allah is not pleased with. So anyway, we spoke about some of these issues in a bit more detail in that lesson. The important thing is that we make a distinction between al-irada al-kawniyya and al-irada al-shar'iyya, and we also make a distinction between that not everything that Allah wills is He necessarily pleased with that thing. And the fourth level of al-qadr was al-khalq, which means that Allah brings the thing into existence, that He creates it and brings it to be. And because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who created everything, He created the asbab, the ways and the means. He gave us qudra, He gave us irada, that we have a will, that we have power, so we can choose to do things, and we can implement things because we have the qudra, because He gave us the means. Then, because Allah is the one who provided and gave these things, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in reality, He is the creator. He is the creator of every single thing, meaning He brings every single thing into existence. And in this sense, we can say that our actions, that they are a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the creator of our actions. Does that mean that Allah is the doer of our actions? Answer is no. The fa'il, we are the ones who do the action. But Allah is the creator of the action, and it can be ascribed to Allah in the sense that Allah creates these actions because He gave us the means, the qudra, the power, the ability, the irada, and so on and so forth. And so He, in essence, is said to be the creator. But as for the doer, the fa'il, then it is the person who does that particular action. So these are important distinctions, because without them, without making these important distinctions, we see many people went astray, and they began to say, for example, that when a mushrik, for example, prostrates to an idol, it is Allah who is the fa'il, Allah is the doer. Okay, and then attached to this is the whole idea of justice. What is al-adl? Justice. Where is justice? How is justice? How do we understand justice? And the whole issue of qudra. Does man have qudra, or is all qudra with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So these are some of the issues that if we don't be precise in understanding these levels and some of the specific issues, then we will make mistakes in al-qadr. We will go astray in al-qadr. So what we want to do in this lesson, as I said, we want to remain upon this topic maybe for this lesson and the next lesson, and just maybe read around some of the scholars, and because this is a difficult topic to sometimes grasp, and in some situations we have to merely say, we submit this affair to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so what I'm going to do here is read from a statement from one of the great scholars of the 4th century. He's called Ibn Battah al-Uqbari, rahimahullah, and he has an excellent book called Al-Ibana an Shari'a and an Shari'atil Firqatin Najiyah. This is a book, Al-Ibana, and it's 7-8 volumes. And in this book he has compiled all of the narrations and the statements of the scholars who came before him, who took from those scholars who came before them, who took from those who came before them, till we go to the time of the Tabi'een and to the Sahaba. And so he compiled all of these narrations. And in this compilation, he deals with different aspects of belief, from belief in Allah's names and His attributes, and belief in Al-Iman, and belief in Al-Qadr, and other issues. And so what we want to do is, he has an excellent short paragraph which summarizes the essential points of our belief in Al-Qadr. So if we believe what is stated here, then the whole issue of, as we said, Al-Qadr, and what is justice, and what is wisdom, and all these issues, inshallah, then it should keep us firm, inshallah ta'ala. So he says, I will give you the English translation, but this is in the first volume of his book Al-Ibana an Shari'at al-Firqat al-Najiyah. It is in the second book on Al-Qadr, the first volume of that book, page 264, and this is a 1415 print. So he says, as for what is obligatory upon us, as for that which is wajib upon all of us to have knowledge of this issue regarding Al-Qadr, and to make tasdeeq of it, meaning to believe in it, and to affirm all of it, to make iqrar, to corroborate and accept all of it, then it is the following. So we have the following points. Number one, that we know that good and evil are from Allah. Al-khair wa shar, that they are created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you remember, just to comment upon this, if you remember in the last lesson, we made a distinction between Allah's action, Allah's fi'l, and that which and the maf'ulat, the things which take place. We said that as it relates to us, from our point of view, we see that there is evil in the creation. Shar, there is evil in the creation. Okay? But as it relates to the action of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is no evil in any of the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for example, when we see a disease, when we see a natural disaster, or when we see evil people who, for example, commit oppression and tyranny and so on and so forth, all of this to us is evil. This is shar, this is evil, no doubt, from our point of view. But from the point of view of Allah's action in creating these people and allowing this evil to be found, from the point of view of Allah's action, we say that it is nothing but wisdom, hikmah, wisdom, and it is nothing but, as we said, hikmah. This is because in Allah's action there is a far-reaching wisdom, a hikmah, and a purpose and an objective behind all of that. So Iblis, he is evil. But in the creation of Iblis, in Allah's action of creating Iblis, there is hikmah, there is wisdom. It is to test and to put to trial. And in the creation of Iblis, there are other objectives that follow, and goals and end results that follow. So when it comes to Allah's actions, all of Allah's actions, there is perfect wisdom, justice, goodness, and benefit. But from our point of view, obviously then evil is only from our point of view. So we gave an example in the last lesson where we said one person, he murders another person. Right? To us, this is evil. It is evil. Now, from Allah's point of view, things go beyond that. There is wisdom, there is the idea of justice, there are many things that follow on from that which is outside the issue here. But the point that we should understand, that good and evil are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we cannot ascribe evil to the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no action of Allah which is evil. Evil only exists in the creation. Only in the creation. Then he says that obedience and disobedience are from the qada of Allah and from His qadar. Every act of obedience, every act of disobedience is decreed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does this mean, decreed? Upon the four levels. Allah knew it, Allah wrote it, Allah willed it, Allah brought it into existence. This is what we mean. Whenever we speak about something is by the qada of Allah and His qadar, this is what we mean. We go back to the four levels of al-qadar. So that obedience, every action of obedience, every action of disobedience, it is from the qada of Allah and His qadar. The third point, he says that whatever befalls us was never going to pass us by, was never going to miss us. And whatever has passed us by, whatever has missed us, was never going to befall us. This is a third thing. Anything that happens to us, it was going to happen. We could never escape it. Anything that missed us, it was never going to come to us. We would never have reached it. Right? This is the third point that he mentions. Then after this he says that Allah created paradise. So remember, this is part and parcel of our belief in Al-Qadr. Because paradise is, the servant's actions in paradise and hellfire, all of it is connected. So he says that Allah created paradise and He created inhabitants for it. He created people for paradise. And He knew those inhabitants. He knew who those would be. He knew them who they would be, with their names and the names of their fathers, before He even created them. Before He even created paradise. He created paradise, and prior to that He knew, He also had people who He was going to create for paradise, and He knew their names, and He knew the names of their forefathers, of their fathers. Then He gave them tawfiq. He gave them success in performing the righteous actions that He is pleased with. So He commanded them, these are still His words, He commanded them to do the righteous deeds. Then He gave them tawfiq, He gave them success in doing those righteous deeds. Then He aided them, He gave them support. And then He acknowledged that they have now performed these deeds. Then He rewarded them, or He will reward them with paradise for performing these deeds as a bounty, as a ni'mah and a rahmah from Him to them. All of this, pay attention to all of this, because this is opposed to the beliefs of those who deviated in the issue of Al-Qadar, because they couldn't understand certain things. They couldn't understand this. They couldn't fathom this in their mind, and so they couldn't understand Allah's hikmah, Allah's wisdom, Allah's justice, and so they went astray. So I'm going to read this again. Allah created Jannah, Allah created paradise, and He created people for that paradise. He knew those people, He knew their names, He knew the names of their fathers. So then He commanded them, do such and such, do righteous deeds. Then He gave them success, He gave them tawfiq to do those righteous deeds. So they did those righteous deeds. So then Allah accepted that from them, He acknowledged it from them, and then He was pleased with them. So then He rewarded them with paradise out of what? Rahmah and ni'mah. Pay attention to these words. It is a rahmah and a ni'mah from Allah that He entered you into paradise. There's nothing to do with your deeds. Your deeds are a sabab. They are a means by which you entered paradise. Allah is the one who created those ways and means for you. He revealed the Sharia. He sent prophets. He sent messengers. He ordered you with goodness. He gave you those ways and means which are the Sharia ways and means by which you enter paradise. So just like we say, Allah created the worldly ways and means. You want to remove your thirst? Drink some water. Okay, these are from the worldly ways and means. Allah has created, there are millions and millions of ways and means that those which we know, those which we don't even know, which are hidden from us. So they are the created asbab by which the creation runs and operates. Okay, and then there are Sharia ways and means. There are the ways and means of Sharia, meaning that if you want to enter paradise, establish 5 prayers, worship Allah alone, be righteous to your parents, okay, and all of the actions of obedience, and keeping away from all of the actions of disobedience. So Allah revealed these created ways and means. He's the one who revealed these created ways and means. Then He gave you success in following those ways and means. Then He entered you into paradise. So all of this is a ni'mah and a rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have to, these words, these are very specific words. Don't just treat this as just words. All these words are being used for a very specific purpose, because they refute the deviation and the misconceptions of those who went astray in this topic. Okay? So this is what we believe. Then, after this, He says that Allah created hellfire. He created Jahannam. And He created people for Jahannam. He created people for Jahannam. He knew their exact number. He knew their exact number. And He knew that which they would do, that which would occur from them. And He decreed upon them what He disliked for it to occur. So again, whenever we say that He decreed for them or decreed upon them, it means the 4 levels of Al-Qadar. He knew it, He wrote it, He willed it, and He brought it into existence. So He decreed for these people things which He Himself would dislike from them. In other words, He decreed for them kufr and shirk and disobedience and so on and so forth. He decreed these affairs upon them even though He dislikes them. He decreed this upon them. And He deserted them, meaning that He didn't protect them from falling into these matters which He dislikes. So then these people, they fell into that which Allah dislikes. And then He punished them for what they fell into. And He is not unjust in any of that. Pay attention to this again. There is no injustice in any of that. No injustice whatsoever. I'm going to read that again. That He created hellfire and He created inhabitants for hellfire. He created them. He knew the exact number. He knew what would occur from them. And then He decreed upon them that they would do that which He dislikes. Then, when He created them, He deserted them and abandoned them. He didn't protect them from doing that which He dislikes. And then, they fell into that which Allah dislikes. And so then Allah punished them due to these actions they performed. And in all of this, there is no injustice from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whatsoever. No injustice can be ascribed to Allah whatsoever for all of that, for any of that. And then He said that these people are not excused. There is no excuse for these people for whatever judgment Allah has made upon them. They are not excused at all. There is no excuse. So then He says, so all of this and whatever is like it from the knowledge of Al-Qadr, that which is binding upon the creation to have knowledge of. This is what is obligatory upon us, to have knowledge of these affairs, to have faith in it, and to submit to it, submit to the command of Allah, to the judgment, the hukm of Allah, and to His Qadar, and to His Qadar. So we see here that Ibn Battah has essentially summarized the belief of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, and you can see from reflecting upon these statements of Ibn Battah that there are some issues that may come to the mind of a person. The idea of justice, al-adl. Where is the idea of justice in this? A person might become confused. And a person might say, well, where is the idea of qudra? The power, the ability, who does it lie with? Does it lie with Allah alone? Does it lie with us only? And so, by not sticking to what has been said in this that we just summarized, a person is likely to make mistakes and fall into problems and mistakes. So what we want to do now, inshallah ta'ala, is briefly touch upon some of the sects who appeared and who deviated on this topic. And so what we're going to relate this back to is again back to the 4 levels of Al-Qadr. So, the first group that we want to mention, this group are the Qadariyya. The Qadariyya, and amongst the Qadariyya are 2 groups. The first group are the Ghulatul Qadariyya, the extremist Qadariyya. Those who went to an extreme in the rejection of Al-Qadr, in denying Al-Qadr. What they said, so this is group number 1. Basically there are 5 groups. One of them is Ahlul Sunnah, which we'll deal with last. And the other 4 groups deviated in this field. So the first group are the extremists amongst the Qadariyya, and they basically said that the actions of the servants are not created by Allah. Allah does not create the actions of the servants. Can anyone explain why they held this view? See, what they were thinking of was the idea of justice, al-adl. They were thinking, how can Allah create the actions of the servants and then hold them accountable as well. So where is the idea of justice in this? This is the question that they thought in their mind. And so they opposed the book and the sunnah. Right? So when they raised this question, they thought, hang on, justice can only be if a servant creates his own actions outside of the will and the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then it's from justice for Allah to punish that person. This opposes the book and the sunnah. This opposes what we find in the Quran and in the sunnah. And because they couldn't understand it with their minds, as we said, they made their mind to, be the judge over what is adl, what is justice, what is not justice, what is injustice, what is dhulm. So anyway, this first group, they denied al-qadr. As we said, there are two groups amongst them. The first one is what we're speaking of now. They are the extremists amongst the Qadariyah. They said, so pay attention, they said, the actions of the servants are not created by Allah, and nor does Allah know of the action of a servant until after it occurs. Two things. They denied that Allah creates the actions of the servants, and they denied that Allah has knowledge of the actions of the servants. So in other words, they denied all four levels of al-qadr. They denied Allah's all-encompassing knowledge. They denied that this knowledge was written down of the actions of the servants. They denied Allah's will, that everything comes under Allah's will. And they denied that Allah is the creator of the actions of the servants. All of this they denied. And the reason, what was the reason that they were using? The idea of al-adl, of justice. Right? They thought, it can't be just that Allah creates everything, Allah knows everything, Allah wills everything, Allah wishes everything, Allah writes everything, then imposes it upon the servant, then holds him accountable. Where's the idea of justice in this? So they used their reason. And so they went astray. And so they denied Allah even has knowledge of what we do until after it has taken place. This is the first group. And so they deny al-ilm, they deny al-qudra, and they deny al-khalq. So this is the first group. The second group, so these are the extreme amongst the Qadariyah. The second group are basically the general Qadariyah, the main body of the Qadariyah. And so these are the Mu'tazila. Because the Qadariyah, they emerged in the first century of Islam, towards the end part of the first century. But in the second century, when this group called the Mu'tazila, when they came about, they inherited this belief of the Qadariyah, and they became the main people who supported and defended this belief of the Qadariyah. And so they began to raise these slogans of al-adl and tawheed and so on and so forth. And this is what they meant. And so they considered it to be from tawheed to deny al-qadr. They considered it to be from justice, al-adl, to deny al-qadr. So this is the second group. So what they said is that the actions of Allah, that the actions of the servant are not created by Allah, but they accepted Allah's knowledge and the writing of Allah of these actions. So they accepted al-ilm wal-kitab. They accepted the first two levels of al-qadr, but they denied the second two levels of al-qadr. So they said, yes, we accept Allah knows everything before it occurs. And we accept that Allah wrote all of that knowledge down that relates to His creation and the actions of His servants. So all of this we accept. But as for Allah's will and Allah creating the actions of the servants, then we believe and we say that the servants create their own actions. A servant has an independent will outside of the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a servant has his own power, qudra, outside of the qudra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And through this, he acts. He chooses his actions. So he either obeys or he disobeys. So he creates his own actions. And again, what is the reason they are saying this? Is because they are operating upon the idea of what they think to be is justice. Because then, they say that only then can we accept, can we understand the idea of reward and punishment. Only then does it make sense of reward and punishment. Right? If the servants create their own actions outside of Allah's will, outside of Allah's qudra. And again, they erred in this, they made a mistake in this, because this is not what the texts in the Quran and the Sunnah have come with. So this is the second group. These two groups are on the side of rejecting Al-Qadr. The next two groups are on the side of exaggerating in Al-Qadr. Of exaggerating in Al-Qadr. So the next group is called the Jahmiyyah. The Jahmiyyah named after Al-Jahm bin Safwan. Al-Jahm bin Safwan. And what they said is, they said that the actions of the servants, yes, they are created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they accepted all 4 levels of Al-Qadr. Allah knows everything, Allah wrote it down, Allah wills everything, Allah brings actions into existence. But what they said was that these are the actual actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So every action which is taking place of righteousness or goodness, so the tawheed of a muwahhid, the salah of a musalli, or the shirk of a mushrik, or the kufr of a kafir, or the ma'siyah, the disobedience of someone who is disobedient, all of these are actions being performed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's Allah who's performing these actions. Allah is the one who is performing these actions in reality. They are Allah's actions in reality. And so therefore they fell into a type of exaggeration. And they denied for the servant that he has any qudra. They denied that he has any qudra. See, the Mu'tazila and the Qadariyya, they exaggerated in the qudra for the servant. Only the servant has qudra outside of Allah's power. This group on the other side, they said the servant has no qudra. He is like, basically, he's like a plant being blown by the wind. It has no choice. Or he's like a strip of cloth hung off a tree. As the wind comes, it blows this cloth. It has no choice. It moves by way of some external force. So in other words, every action of one of us now, when we stand, when we sit, when we drink, when we eat, when we walk, when we move, we have no choice in this. These are actions being performed on us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are Allah's actions, they are not our actions. And so this is what they believe, this is what they said. And what are they operating upon? What is the idea these people operating upon? On this side it was al-adl, justice. So they want to venerate the idea of justice. On this side, what are these people operating upon? Qudra. Because they want to establish qudra only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they saw this to be from Tawheed. That every single action that is being performed, it is the actual action of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is incorrect. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has affirmed qudra for the servant. Allah has affirmed a will for the servant. And it is the servant who does the actual action. A servant is the one who prays to Allah. So do you see the evil effect of this statement of the Jabariyya? So a person who is praying, is that the action of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No, that action is created by Allah. But who is the one who is praying? It is the servant who is praying to his Lord. Now, pay very careful attention, because when you understand these things, you will understand what happened to these people over time. Because these are the very same people who were led to the idea that the only thing in existence is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because these beliefs and these mistakes in these foundations of these beliefs, in Allah's names, in Allah's attributes, in Allah's qadar, it led them to come to the conclusion after many centuries that all of existence is just one. Right? So these underlying mistakes. So for example, when they said that Allah is the one who's acting in reality, there is only one fa'il, it is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is Tawheed. What are you really saying? You are saying that the worshipper and the worshipped is one and the same. The one worshipping and the one being worshipped is the one and the same. So you see, these are now the usul, the foundations for wahdatul wujud, for the belief and the saying that all of existence is just one. We don't make any distinction between the creator and the created. There's nothing halal, there's nothing haram, everything is. Because if everything is Allah's action, where now do we have the idea of al-halal wal-haram? That disappears as well, you see. So these are some of the effects that emanate from this belief. And so, as we said, they denied that the servant has any action, and so what they were operating upon was the idea of al-qudra, that we can only believe in the tawheed of Allah if we say that every action that takes place, it is actually Allah who's doing the action. It is Allah who is the fa'il. And only this then is tawheed. And this is clearly a mistake. This is a big mistake. It is a great deviation. And these people are the Jahmiyyah. And so these people, what the effect that they have is that they began to belittle the Sharia. They belittle the Sharia as a result of this belief. It leads to a belittlement of the Sharia. The Sharia now doesn't have any importance. Why? Because the servants are really forced to do what they do. And now we can start using the argument of al-Qadar. When you start holding this belief, the servant has no power, no ability, you can now start using the arguments against al-Qadar. What did Iblis say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Bima aghwaytani. This is what Iblis said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because you have misled me. When he refused to prostrate to Adam alayhi salam. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expelled him. And what did he say? He said, Bima aghwaytani. That because you have expelled me. So he used the argument of al-Qadar to justify his own action. Right? And this is the same argument. That's why amongst this group of the Jabariyah, this group is called the Jabariyah. Because Jabar means to be forced and compelled. Alright, so on that side we had the Qadariyah who deny al-Qadar. On this side we have those who emphasize and exaggerate in al-Qadar. So we call them the Jabariyah. Those who speak of being forced. So from them are the Iblisiyah. Because this comes from the argument of Iblis. That he said, because you have misguided me. So he justified his own action and ascribed it to the action of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove blame from himself. Right? And likewise we have the Mushrikiyah. These are the ones again mentioned in the Quran who said that if Allah had so willed, we wouldn't have committed shirk. If Allah willed, we wouldn't have committed shirk. We only committed shirk because Allah willed for us to commit shirk. So again, this is an argument using al-Qadar to argue and justify one's deviation and one's mistakes and one's errors. And all of this comes as a result of denying the qudra and the irada from the servant. Denying that we have a will and we have a choice and we have the power and we have the freedom to do what we want to do without feeling compelled. Right, so they denied this for the servant, and therefore this now opens up the door for these two types of arguments. The Iblisi argument of Iblis, and the argument of the mushriks mentioned in the Quran, that they argued that Allah willed, so we committed shirk. If Allah didn't will, we wouldn't have committed shirk. Right, so they tried to use al-Qadar as an argument to free themselves from any blame. So this is the third group. They are the Jahmiyyah or the Jabariyah. The fourth group are the Ash'ariyah, the Ash'aris, and they are Jabariyah as well. What they tried to do is they held on to the same belief, and they again said that everything that takes place in the creation is but the action of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they were operating upon the same idea, that it is from Tawheed to affirm that Allah is the only action, Allah is the only fa'il, Allah is the only one who is doing the action. However, they tried to free themselves and escape from being linked with the Jahmiyyah, with the Jabariyah. So they began to play some word games. They began to play some word games to make it look as if what they believe and what they hold is different. So what they said is, we don't believe in Jabr, we believe in Al-Kasb. So they use this new term, Al-Kasb, which means to earn. And so what they really said was, they said basically that all the actions which take place are Allah's actions. Allah is the one who makes these actions take place in the servant. And then Allah gives a reward for the one in whom good deeds take place. And Allah gives a sin for the one in whom evil deeds take place. So a person, therefore, he earns things by way of actions that are performed or made to occur in his body. Okay? So his body is a place in which actions take place. Those actions are the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But because they take place in that individual, he earns rewards or he earns sin. Right? So they try to come with this explanation. But really, if you think about it, it is no different. It is exactly the same thing. What you are saying is, Allah is the fa'il in truth. He's doing actions and your body is just like, your body is just a repository where actions are taking place, and you just simply get a credit for the actions being taking place in your body. It is no different, it is just word games. Playing with words, playing with definitions, and this is the way of the people of Kalam. Ilmul Kalam. And these are the groups of Kalam. And the ones who are known and famous for playing with words, playing with definitions to make things appear something other than what it really is, these are the Ahlul Kalam from the Asha'ira, Maturidiyya. This is what their books are filled with, and this is what they are known for. And so this is the fourth group, Al-Asha'ira, and they are a group of the Jabari. Again, they are operating upon what? The idea of Al-Qudra. And only Allah should have absolute, which is true, it is correct, only Allah has Qudra, but they denied the Qudra from the servant. So now in your mind you should now have a clear idea. That there is one group on this side, they are struggling to come to the idea of justice in their mind. They can't understand how this is justice. That Allah wills, creates, knows, decrees, and then He rewards and punishes. They couldn't fathom this. Although this is what is in the book and the Sunnah, as we saw from Ibn Battah. So then they began to come with this idea of justice, and so therefore they denied either all the levels of Al-Qadr, or they denied some of the levels of Al-Qadr. And then on this side we have the Jabariyya. They are struggling to understand the idea of Qudra. They are trying to say, how can we believe, how is it from the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that a servant should have Qudra, that a servant should have the free ability to act and to, whatever. So they couldn't understand this, and so they said that it is from the Tawheed of Allah to affirm that every action, the fa'il of every action is Allah Himself. And again, these are mistakes. As for Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, the fifth group, who are the people upon the truth, their belief, they say that the actions of the servants, our actions, all actions that we do, they are created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the creator of those actions. How is He the creator? Because He is the one who gave us the will. He created in us the will. He gave us the ability to think. He gave us the ability to make decisions, to make moral judgments. He sent the books and messengers to us to establish the hujjah. He gave us limbs by which to act. And so therefore, since He is the one who gave all these things, everything we do is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so these actions, we say, are maf'ulatun lillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning that these are actions that Allah creates, and that they are brought about by way of Allah giving these faculties to mankind. But as for the ones who do them, the one who is the fa'il, it is no doubt the creation. And so we believe in all of the four levels of Al-Qadr. So we say that the action of the servant the action of the servant, we say that we ascribe it to Allah in the sense that Allah created that action. And we ascribe it to ourselves in the sense that we did the action. Remember, we did this in the previous lesson. So we are the ones who are the fa'ilun, we are the ones who do the action, and Allah is the one who created the action. So therefore, Allah gave us irada and qudra. Through that irada and qudra, we did the action. Isn't that right? When you do any action, when you stand up to pray, how did you stand up and pray? Did you will to pray? Did you want to pray? Did you wish to pray? The answer is yes. When you perform the prayer, how did you perform that prayer? You had a qudra. Allah gave you a qudra, an ability, an istita, an ability. And so you prayed. So clearly we believe that man has the will and a man has the power, the qudra, irada and qudra. So we affirm this for mankind. But we believe Allah is the one who gave that to the servant. Allah gave irada and qudra to the servant. And so therefore we can say that every action of man is from the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah, Imam al-Bukhari, the author of the Sahih al-Bukhari, he wrote a book called Khalq Af'al al-Ibad, the creation of the actions of the servants. He wrote a whole book on this topic to refute the groups who went astray on this subject. And so what we do when we hold this position, what are we combining between? We are combining between al-adl. We are affirming al-adl for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we are affirming for Allah al-hikmah. Al-hikmah, wisdom for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we are affirming al-qudra for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we combine all of these things together. We affirm al-qudra and al-hikmah and al-adl. And there is no conflict between any of these. There's no conflict. Whereas these people see a conflict, whether on this side, they see a conflict between al-adl, between the adl of Allah, what is justice, and between Allah's ilm and qudra and irada, and they see a conflict. And in this side, the Jabariyah, they see a conflict between the qudra of the servant, and the qudra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, whereas Ahlul Sunnah, everything fits together, there is no conflict, there is no contradiction, everything is like we explained from Ibn Battah, the idea of justice, rahmah, mercy, adl from Allah, all of this, we touched upon these things. So, this is the second issue that we wanted to cover today, and so another issue that we want to, inshallah, cover, which we'll start now, and maybe we can continue in the next lesson, inshallah ta'ala, is, so we'll begin. So is that all that clear to everybody? Any questions before we move further? Because this can be quite a difficult topic to grasp, and so we need to have the foundations in place first, good, strong. Any questions? Any issues on that? As long as it's to do with the topic, inshallah.
The belief of the Qadaris, means is kufr, right?
Huh?
It's kufr and shirk, right?
Right, we just make a distinction between those who deny Allah has knowledge. So those who deny Allah's all-encompassing knowledge of things that are to occur, and they claim and they say that Allah only knows things after they occur, these we declare as disbelievers. This is disbelief. The Imams of the Salaf would declare this group as disbelievers. But as for the other ones, the Mu'tazila, then no, we don't declare them to be disbelievers on account of that deviation that they have, even though we say that they are astray. They are astray. Yeah. So it's only those who reject the ilm, the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so now inshallah, if we have all that established, there are some other issues now that we want to discuss. So the first one, this was a question that happened that someone mentioned in the last lesson. It was a question someone raised. Something like, do we have to love everything which comes from Al-Qada wal-Qadar? And it was a good question. So I mentioned in the last lesson that this was something that we're going to discuss specifically in the following lesson, which is this lesson. So these are some issues now connected that we want to really try to cover, inshallah. So Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he has a article, or he has a passage in his book Madarij al-Salikin. Madarij al-Salikin. And in this book, he has a section which speaks about loving and hating what comes from al-qada wal-qadar. The issue of loving and hating. Do we love everything which comes from al-qada wal-qadar, even though we might dislike it? Or do we hate everything? How do we understand this topic? So, he discusses this issue. And so he says, so inshallah we'll try to read through some of this now and maybe conclude in the next lesson. So he says, as for the speech about being pleased with all of al-qada, because some people were holding the opinion saying that you have to be pleased inwardly with everything that happens from al-qada, everything. Now this is a very general statement, ambiguous general statement. We have to really clarify things so that we understand the truth about this issue. So he says, so basically some people are saying this, that yes, it's wajib to be pleased with every single thing that comes from al-qada wal-qadar. So Ibn al-Qayyim, he responds to this in a number of points. He says, firstly, by which revealed book, or with which sunnah, or with which understanding have you come to know that it is wajib to be pleased with everything that Allah decrees and ordains? Where have you, basically he's asking, where have you got this from? Which book? Which sunnah? Which understanding have you taken this idea from, that yes, you have to be pleased with everything? It's wajib to be pleased with everything that comes from al-qada wal-qadar. Where have you taken this from? This is the first question he asks. Then he says, forget even claiming that it is wajib. Forget even wajib. Even just the jawaz, the permissibility, that it being, yajuz, permissible, let alone it being wajib. He says, look, here is the book of Allah. Here is the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And here are the rational proofs of the intellect. And none of these three things indicate that it is wajib to be pleased with everything that comes from al-qada wal-qadar. Or even that it is permissible to be pleased with everything that comes from al-qada wal-qadar. That's the first point that he makes. He says, rather, from al-maqdi. Now pay attention to the terms. We make a distinction between al-qada. Al-qada is an action of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are always pleased with the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is al-qada. Al-maqdi is that which is decreed, the thing actually being decreed. Right? So we make a distinction between al-qada, which is an action of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and al-maqdi, which is the actual thing that is decreed. Alright? If you understand the difference between these two terms, this matter will be very clear to you. Right? And inshallah, there's some examples that will explain this even further, inshallah ta'ala. So Ibn al-Qayyim says that from al-maqdi, from those things which are decreed and which take place, is that which Allah Himself is pleased with and which Allah Himself is displeased with, that angers Him and causes Him to hate. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself, from the things which are from the maqdurat, the things that He has decreed, things which take place, if Allah Himself loves some of them and yet hates some of them, where then have you got this idea that we have to be pleased with everything that is from the qada wal qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Where have you got this? And this is the first point, this is the first thing that he says. So he says, so therefore we likewise are not pleased with everything, with everything that is decreed. Just like the one who ordains them, the one who decrees them, he's not pleased with everything that he decrees. Okay? He says, rather from al-qada is that which angers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which He Himself decrees. Just like there are amongst the various created beings, people, upon whom Allah is angry with, who are cursed and who are rebuked. So this is the first point. This shows that to make this claim that we have to be pleased with everything from al-qada wal-qadar, this is a false claim. Because Allah Himself is pleased with some of it and displeased with some of it. That's the first point. He says, secondly, The second issue now is that there are two matters. There is qada. Qada is an action, it is a fi'l, and it is established with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the action of Allah. And the second thing is al-maqdi. Al-maqdi, the thing which is decreed. This is the thing, the maf'ul, the thing which is done. And this is separate from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This has got nothing, so as we said, coming back to the issue, Allah is the creator of the actions of the servants, but He Himself does not do the actions of the servants. So qada is the action of Allah, and the maqdi is the action of the servant, that which takes place in the creation. Right? So this is the same distinction. So he says, as for the first al-qada, which is the action of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of it is goodness. As we said, in the actions of Allah, there is nothing evil whatsoever. All of Allah's actions in everything that He does and that He brings about, even if it is evil in relation to us, then in all of those actions of Allah, it is absolute perfection, wisdom, justice. So he says, so al-qada, all of it is goodness, and it is justice and wisdom. So we have to be pleased with Allah's actions, Allah's action. So Allah's action of decreeing something, we have to be pleased with Allah's action. As for al-maqdi, it is of two types. It is of two types. From it is that which we are to be pleased with, and from it is that which we are not pleased with. So the things that take place in the creation, there are some things that we are pleased with. So for example, are we pleased with the iman? When a kafir becomes a mu'min, are we pleased with this? Of course we are pleased with this. Or when a mu'min becomes a kafir, are we pleased with this? Of course we're not pleased with this. We're not pleased with it at all. So this is a clear proof that that not everything from al-qada wal-qadar do we have to be pleased with. There are some things that we dislike from al-qada wal-qadar, like the sin of a sinner, the kufr of a kafir, the shirk of a mushrik, and so on and so forth, and all those kind of issues that come into that. So then, the third issue, he says, al-qada has two aspects. The first of them is as it relates to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and its ascription to Allah. So when we speak of al-qada, when we look at it as being Allah's action, then all of it is good, all of it is that we are pleased with. When it comes to the servant, when it comes to the actual servant, when it comes to us, then we say it divides into two things. That which we are pleased with, that which we are not displeased with. So let me give you an example. When it comes to the action of Allah, if Allah decrees and wills disbelief upon an individual, we are pleased with that action of Allah. We are pleased with the action of Allah. If Allah wills and decrees belief and iman and righteousness upon a person, we are pleased with the action of Allah in doing that. Right? But as for our point of view, when we see a person becoming a disbeliever, we are displeased with the action. When we see when we see a non-Muslim becoming a believer, we are now pleased with the action. Yet in Allah's action in bringing these two separate things to be, in both of those actions there is goodness. We are pleased with Allah's action in both instances. Because here we are speaking about Allah's action. But as for the thing itself, the maqdi, in one instance we are displeased, in the other instance we are pleased. Just like Allah Himself is pleased with one instance and He is displeased with another instance. Yet in both of His actions there is wisdom, justice and perfection. Right? So I hope that's clear. And then he gives an example to illustrate that, should really make things clear. An example of that, taking someone's life, to kill someone, to murder someone. There are two angles that we look at this thing from. The first angle is that Allah decreed it to occur. Allah willed it to occur. Allah wrote it, Allah willed it, Allah brought it to be. And Allah made it to be the ajal, the point, the actual decreed time that a person is going to die. That was written for him. And that it's going to be the end of his life. So from all of these angles, we are pleased with that qada. We are pleased with Allah's action in writing, willing, decreeing, and taking this person's life. But as from another angle, the fact that someone murdered somebody else, someone killed somebody else, Someone transgressed upon the right of somebody else, and he earned this evil deed, and he chose to do this evil deed. He disobeyed Allah by way of this. Then we are angered. We are angered by this action. We're not pleased with this action at all. We're not pleased with this maqdi and this maqdur. Right? So this is how we understand these issues. And so similarly, we can apply the same principle to other things. Like, for example, does a person have to be pleased that, for example, that some calamity comes to him? Like maybe he has an illness and he suffers from that illness. We look at it from two angles. The first angle, that Allah wrote it, decreed it, brought it about. From this aspect, we submit and we believe that we accept that we are pleased and happy with the fact that Allah decreed it. But as for the actual pain that we are suffering and going through, is it wajib that we have to be pleased with this? And the answer is no. Because we can dislike pain, we can dislike harm. We dislike these things. We don't like these things coming to us, and we don't like them. Our soul doesn't like them. So, in other words, the point that we are making, that we make a distinction between these two things, that which is the qada of Allah, Allah's action in writing, willing, decreeing, bringing into existence, and between the maqdi, that which is brought into existence. We have to be pleased with everything that occurs from Allah's action, but as for the thing itself, then it's not wajib. This is the point that Ibn al-Qayyim is making. Who is making this claim? That is wajib to be pleased with everything from Allah's qadar. This is false. This is not correct. It is false according to the book and the sunnah. And so this is one of the issues that we wanted to touch upon. I think that's really all we have time for. Inshallah, we have some other similar statements from Shaykh al-Sa'di, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen. Inshallah ta'ala, we will probably expand upon them in the next lesson. I think there's an announcement to make. Quick announcement. So inshallah ta'ala, tomorrow there will be a talk by our brother Abu Hakim Bilal Davis. It is called How to Attain Happiness in Life. How to Attain Happiness in Life. And this is a really excellent little work by Imam al-Sa'di. Imam al-Sa'di rahimahullah, Shaykh Abdul Rahman bin Nasr al-Sa'di, he's from the teachers of Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah. He's a great scholar from the last century. And this will be a talk tomorrow, read by our brother Abu Hakim Bilal Davis, tomorrow here at 7:30 p.m. So inshallah, try to come along, bring your friends, family, everybody, children, inshallah, and benefit from this. And so that will be tomorrow 7:30. And I think that's the only announcement. So with that, we conclude our session today. وَجَزَاكُمُ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا. سُبْحَانَكَ اللَّهُمَّ وَبِحَمْدِكَ وَأَشْهَدُ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ وَأَسْتَغْفِرُكَ وَأَتُوبُ إِلَيْكَ.